Shut up and sit down.
Oh, hello and welcome to a North Wales side-by-side video. Many people who own MR2s complain about the handbrake not working correctly. Even after they've changed the handbrake cables, they can't get their handbrake to work properly. Well, today I think I've found the correct way of resetting the handbrake calipers after changing cables, pads, discs and new calipers on the back of my MR2. So I thought, before I show you how I've equalised both cables on my MR2, I'd show you a caliper, an old caliper. This is one of the old ones, and show you where everything should be when you set the caliper up. Now the bit we're looking at here, let's get a screwdriver. This is the piston that pushes against the brake pads, and if you look at it, this rubber boot's knackered by the way, there's two cutouts. On the back of the brake pad that goes against the piston there's a pin, and it has to locate in one of these two cutouts on the piston, and that stops the piston from rotating because of the design of the handbrake mechanism. When you operate this lever, which has the handbrake cable connected here which pulls, it rotates a cam inside the caliper which twists, a bit like a cam on a camshaft. It opens a valve, it closes a valve, it opens a valve, it closes a valve. This just operates in that orientation. But also inside, it runs down the inside of the piston if you ever take one apart. It's what looks like a threaded rod and a mechanism in there which is a ratchet mechanism. Now as your brake pads wear out, the piston ends up sticking further out. The ratchet mechanism compensates for the wear in the rear pads. So every time you put your foot on the foot brake, hydraulic pressure pushes piston against the pads which squeeze the disc. But the moment you release, piston goes back into the caliper, allowing the wheel to turn again. But that leaves a gap between the discs and the pads. Well, you need to compensate for that, for the handbrake to work, which is the whole idea of the ratchet mechanism. Now if I move this lever, watch what the piston does. It goes in and out, and that's all it'll do, because I've just reset that caliper as far in as it'll go. That handbrake will grip on the disc, but all that's doing at the moment is taking up the free play that naturally occurs when you take your foot off the brake. So what you have to do on these MR2s when you're setting up these calipers for the first time, after winding that piston back, that hasn't latched onto the ratchet mechanism yet, because you've got to force the piston out with the foot brake. So I'll show you the trick I've discovered today, and I'll show you my results on the compensator in the car. So let me take you in the car now and I'll show you. I'll have to take the car apart because I have actually put it back together. So I'll pull the centre console off, jump in the driver's seat, and I'll show you the procedure for resetting the mechanism. The click you need to listen for when you follow the procedure that I'm going to explain when I get in the car is this. Listen for this. That click, that's just set the mechanism now inside. That's compensated for any wear. But you have to go through the procedure I tell you about to get the hydraulic piston to come out so you can reset that caliper. It all makes sense when you're in the car and you're pumping the brake and you keep your foot on the brake and you just follow what I said in the video. You'll hear that click whilst you're sat in the car, and you need to hear both calipers click. And you will hear it, but it takes a lot of pumping. That's the best way I've found. You can see what's happening there. Every time you move that lever, piston comes out and clamps the handbrake pads. But what you want when you do adjust the cable is you need that to return to the stop. You don't want to adjust the cable so much that your cables are holding the handbrake in a position like that. It needs to return. Don't over tension the cables. Doing it the way I'm going to tell you how to do it lets that return to its stop, so when you pull the caliper that works correctly and then returns when you let go of the parking brake mechanism. It all makes sense when you follow the instructions. Right, so let's move said handbrake mechanism out of the way. First thing you need to do to reset one of these handbrakes, as you can see here, mine's very equal. What you'll find when you first put the cables on, you think, great, I'll put some adjustment on the cable, pull the handbrake, and what happens is it doesn't pull equal. It'll pull one side and you'll end up with a compensator that pulls one side or the other. It favours one caliper. You'll never get a handbrake to work properly, or work on one wheel but not the other. What you have to do is reset both rear calipers. It's gone midnight, I'm not starting it up, but I'll talk you through the sequence. You have to start the car up. That's the first thing you need to do. Warm the car up. Whilst the car's warming up, find the adjuster nut, which is down here. Take all the adjustment that you think you've put on the cable, take it off. So you've got slack in this cable. The handbrake's doing nothing. You want some free play in the handbrake. And I mean, when I say free play, you want the handbrake to do that and not operate that. With the engine running, you need to pump that foot brake probably 20 to 30 times. Just keep pumping it and pumping it and pumping it and pumping it. And when you think you've done enough pumps, say you've done 20 or 30 pumps, plant your foot as hard on the brake pedal as you possibly can and hold it there. Now at this point, you've got your foot buried. Take the slack up in your cable. And adjust that up till you've got about, you struggle to get 5 clips. This is the point where this will start to equalise. You can see mine's quite good. Mine isn't a million miles off. That's the position it sits in. It's not quite equal yet. I've still got a little bit of playing to do to it. But you can see it pulls. It's not doing this. It's pulling like that. I've still got a little bit of playing to do. But they're pulling pretty even, these cables are. But even in its sitting position, one's slightly further forward than the other one. I'm not going to worry about that, because it's as good as I can get it at the moment. But once you've pulled the handbrake the first time, still with your foot on the brake, release it. Then go back to the brake pedal and pump it another 20, 30, 40 times. And if you're really, really lucky, you will hear the rear calipers, the ratchet mechanism setting, and you should hear a very distinctive click. That means that mechanism on that caliper has started to adjust up. It's the only way I've found to get the caliper to reset. Yes, it means sitting in the car with it running, pumping and pumping and pumping. But once you've set the cables up, you should have, like I've just showed you, a nice equal pull on these two. It should work. I know this one does now. Having done this, probably spent half an hour, 45 minutes, pumping, pumping, pumping. Pull the handbrake, release it, take the tension back off the cable, pump the brake pedal again until I hear another click, put tension back on the cable, pull it back up, put it back down, all the time with your foot on the brake. Take the tension off the cable again, pump, pump, pump on the foot brake, put some tension back on the cable, pull the handbrake back up. And each time you do it, that equaliser bar will start equalising itself out. Instead of it being one in front of the other, it'll equal itself out. So now when you pull the brake, they pull together rather than it pulling one more than the other. This one's quite good. So like I say, I've still got to have a little play with it, but I think my problem now is these brakes have got no miles on them. They haven't been out on the road yet. I need to bed the pads in, do 100 miles or so, get all the pads working, get the discs bedded in, then come back and do it again. But initially, that's how you set the handbrake. Start the engine, take the tension off the cable, pump the brake pedal 20, 30 times, get your foot on the pedal, put some adjustments on the cable till you can pull it up about 5 good clicks, watch the compensator, and each time you go through the procedure, tension on, pump the pedal, tension off, pump the pedal, tension off, pump the pedal, you'll see that equaliser doing what, instead of being like that, it'll start equalising itself out. That's your handbrake mechanism in the calipers resetting themselves. That should get you a half decent handbrake. Once you've put 100 miles on the pads, go and do it again. Eventually, I promise you, you will have a very, very, very good handbrake, and it'll work every single time. And the other thing I've read in the book, and I've never read the book for this car, it does tell you in the book, when you set the parking brake, the e-brake, whatever you want to call it, you shouldn't just pull the lever up. You should have your foot on the brake when you set the parking brake. Reason being is the piston is now hydraulically clamping the disc. Now you mechanically clamp the disc, so when you release your foot brake, you've got a handbrake that's properly clamped, rather than just relying on the cam mechanism and taking first up the space after the piston's gone back. You've clamped that disc with it already clamped, and you can guarantee your handbrake's then going to work. That's how I found the best way to adjust this handbrake. Not just put the cables on, adjust it up, crank, 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 check each one's working, put more pressure on it. All you're doing is stretching one of the cables. One's not working properly. Going through it this way will equalise the cables, will reset the ratchet mechanism in the calipers, and your handbrake will work. I guarantee it, it will work. I hope the explanation of how to do it is going to help some of you out there who are struggling with these handbrakes. I've struggled with it for a couple of days until I started playing with the caliper that I've got on the bench and realised once you've wound it all the way back in, the piston doesn't come out. It just comes out and goes back in on the cam. Hasn't reset the ratchet mechanism in the caliper, and that's what you've got to reset on the car by pumping the brakes. That's all you're trying to do, but you have to do it with no tension on the cable, and be prepared to just pump, 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 tension, check, take tension off, pump, 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 tension, check, and you just go through that process until that equalizer bar equals up. That's all you can do, and just keep doing it. Eventually it will work. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Click like, consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you very much for watching.